Hi everyone, I'm Amy Johnson Crow. So many of us have someone in our family tree who served in World War II. And it's a challenge even for those of us who have been doing genealogy for a long time. Well, I have someone here today who can really help us with getting started with our World War II research. Jennifer Hollick, who is awesome with World War II research. Where do you even get started? I know a lot of the people who are watching this have heard about a fire in St. Louis and so many of the records were lost, and where do we even begin?
Well, the first place to start is documenting everything you think you know. So every family story that you've heard, every piece of paper, letter, photograph, and if you have letters, keep the envelopes that go with them, because usually the soldier has the service unit that he's in and his service number, which you absolutely need, and often a location when they're stateside. It'll be stamped on the envelope by the military camp. So using that, you can start to put a timeline of service together, which is a requirement to do military research.
Right. So really some of those things that we already have at home, whether they're letters or something like that. So as we see every day, we're losing so many of the veterans who were part of that greatest generation. And let's say that we're researching someone who has passed on. One thing that I'm always confused about when I see a military marker, trying to decipher what all of that means. It's like, okay, I know that that's something with his service, but I don't know how to decipher that. Are there any good sources or any good tips you can give us for how to kind of read that?
When you're looking at a headstone, sometimes it will just have the branch of service and it might have the final unit.
Okay.
And that's especially at the American Battle Monuments Commission, ABMC cemeteries overseas.
Okay.
Those are the final units in which someone served. And even if they survived the war and you have a separation and discharge paper, it's the final unit.
Okay.
So when you have that, there are some abbreviation dictionaries online for military to decipher some of those abbreviations that you'll see.
Okay.
But you also can use that to start working backward through the military records, because soldiers were in more than one unit. So you can't assume that final unit was the whole story, because it almost never is.
Really?
Yes.
So it would actually be unusual to find someone who stayed with one unit the entire time.
Yes, because soldiers, even if they did stay with one unit the entire time, I did research for a client who was 5th Infantry Division.
Okay.
The entire time he was overseas. Now, he was in different units during training, but he was wounded 30 June 1944 and taken out of his unit until 19 December. So even though he was in the 5th Division while he was overseas, everything between 30 June and 19 December does not apply to his service.
Okay.
And I actually recently published several quick guides to getting started on your military research with the death files, online research. It goes through all of these starting tips. And then the branch-specific Army books, which have my research strategy, which you've only heard at RootsTech. Nobody else in the country, the National Archives, military museums, nobody else is teaching you this. But it's in my books now.
And we will have links to all of Jennifer's resources in the show notes, so check that out down in the description. With the destruction that we had at the archives in St. Louis, and there were a lot of records lost, is it true or not that everything was lost?
No. Approximately 80% of the Army and the Army Air Force's service files were burned. But St. Louis has technology that's developed even in the last year, 5 years, that can take some of those burned documents, and it's not an X-ray machine, but it kind of works as an X-ray machine to see what's beneath that burn material and pull some of that out, so you still have the data. I have service records for clients that are in a plastic sleeve that say do not remove because of mold. So they are treating this. There are also a lot of records for the Army and the Army Air Forces, like company morning reports, that St. Louis will not search for you. You either have to go there or hire a research firm like mine, and we get that for you. But those records are required if you want to reconstruct service, even if the file survived. Because all of those service files, no matter what branch you're talking about, they have all the pieces of the puzzle in there. And we think when we're reconstructing service, it's because of the fire, but everybody's reconstructing service, because it's not laid out in any of those files an exact timeline of what happened.
Okay.
You have to decipher it. And the Navy and the Marine Corps have so many abbreviations, you need an online military dictionary to figure out what it is they're talking about.
So, well, and you mentioned the Navy and the Marines. We hear a lot about the destruction of the records for the Army and the Army Air Force. What about destruction of records for the Navy and the Marines? Were their records also affected by the fire in St. Louis?
The National Archives website says like less than 1%, so we don't even mention them.
Okay.
But when we look at either morning reports, those company level records, or even unit records, sometimes those don't exist anymore because the ship that they're on, if it's a Navy ship, and the records are in a room and there's a fire on the ship, those can be destroyed.
Right.
If the company records are on a truck moving through Europe and that truck gets hit by strafing, those records can be destroyed.
Right.
So it's not just the fire that we have to contend with.
Right. Well, thank you so
You're
much
welcome.
for all. Well, I mean, and it's encouraging to me that we do have the technology that they're using in St. Louis, so that we can pull some of this data from the papers that were burned back in, what was it, 1973? Yeah. Oh, still dealing with that. But now we have that technology, and that we actually can reconstruct their service.
I do it every day for clients. It changes their lives. You wouldn't believe it.
Oh,
and a lot of people at Roots Tech have said, because I talk about the spiritual side of it and the healing side of it, and a lot of people are coming up to me and saying, wow, I didn't know that anybody else felt that way about these records, but it changes lives.
And to me, it's been amazing talking to people who have talked to their relatives who were in the war, and they never really talked about it.
Right.
They didn't talk about their service when they got home. So being able to discover some of these stories and get that healing, I think that's really, it's a really wonderful thing that you're doing.
Thanks.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
And if anybody wants to find out more about you and the services that you provide, where can they find you?
I'm at the World War II Research and Writing Center. It's http://wwiirwc.com.
Okay. We'll have a link down below.
It's a most comprehensive website of educational articles, research materials. I even have a network in Europe of researchers that Americans really should be tapping into. So take some time with your coffee and explore the website, because there's nothing else like it online.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And you can find out more about other genealogy topics over at amyjohnsoncrow.com, and feel free to subscribe here to my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.